Coming to you from iconic Studio A here at Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs. It's time for the Gardening Simplified YouTube, radio, and podcast show with Stacy Hervella. Me, Rick Weist, and our engineer and producer, Adriana Robinson. Well, when it comes to berry good plants, I'd have to say Juneberry or Serviceberry has to be a favorite of mine, and blueberries, you just can't beat that fall color. But I love the fruit on dogwoods and viburnums in the fall, and you've got chokeberry and winterberry that are touted as excellent native berry producers. Stacy, I think this topic today is right in your wheelhouse because I know how much you love plants and you love birds. Fall is a very good season.
It is. And, all of this, it's very easy for us to look at a beautiful plant laden in berries and think, that's great. But really, this is all about, giving animals the opportunity to stock up heavily on food and spread those seeds around. So the plants, they know what they're doing, as it were. And it's all timed. Of course, the Juneberry is wonderful, but it's right there in the name. That was months ago. So the ones now tend to be ones that are going to be deposited around winter and hopefully, if all goes well, some of those seeds will make it to next spring.
You betcha. And stay tuned because rumor has it the Birdman's going to swoop in today for segment 4, and we'll talk about how birds in fall and winter truly rely on these berries and this fruit. Now, Stacy, some berry-producing shrubs need a pollinator in order to bear fruit. So let's do a little horticultural terminology here a minute. There's dioecious, right? And there's monoecious.
Yeah.
Now, dioecious shrubs they bear male and female flowers on separate plants. So a really good example of that would be a plant that I love in fall going into winter, and that is berry poppins. But you need a pollinator
Winterberry
for that,
holly,
right?
Yeah. So this is a winterberry holly, and it is a deciduous holly. We've talked about it plenty on the show before. It's native to here in Michigan and through most of the U.S. And yeah, it's a plant that just becomes positively laden with berries. But like other hollies, it is in fact dioecious. So if you want fruit, and certainly in the case of winterberry holly, you want fruit. There's not much else to recommend the plant unless you're getting fruit. Whereas if, you have your more traditional evergreen holly, the fruit might be slightly less important because you're still getting that great, beautiful, glossy evergreen foliage. Then yes, you need the plants are separate by male and female. So only the female plants will get fruit. The male plants only serve to pollinate it. Both will flower, but the male flowers only have pollen, whereas the female plants have an ovary that will get pollinated and develop into a berry. But you will know if a plant is male or female based on its name. And a lot of people will ask us, at Proven Winners and say, hey, I want to plant berry poppins, winterberry holly, but how do I know if I'm getting male or female? Well, the answer is if you are buying a berry poppins winterberry holly, it is female. If you are buying a Mr. Poppins winterberry holly, then it is a male. And very often I would say, I can't offhand think of a case, they're always going to have these kind of gendered names that makes it pretty clear. No one's trying to trick you into, buying the wrong thing, that the female varieties are named something related to female or fruit or berries, and the male varieties usually have Mr. or boy or prince or something like that, so that you know that they're a male pollinator. And even though the males, of course, don't get the berries and aren't as showy, the good news is that you can usually use one male to pollinate up to 5 females. So you don't need one male for every female in order to get good berries.
Hello, Mr. Poppins. And he's got to be like within 50 feet proximity.
Yeah,
right?
50 feet is sort of the standard number. It's not like a hard and fast rule, but that number is based on how far you can expect a pollinating insect to fly during foraging trips, because of course it has to go to the male, get pollen, and then go to the female, and the female tricks the little pollinating insect into thinking that it has pollen with these little fake anthers, but it goes over there and it doesn't do anything but leave some pollen for the fruit to germinate. So,
Bummer. And then, of course, the monoecious. So these are shrubs that are going to berry regardless of whether or not Mr. Poppins is around, so to speak. And there are some great ones. Of course, Proudberry, Coralberry, Beautyberry, And I want you to help me out with this one, Stacy. Pyracamelis. Camellies. Okay. Now, the reason that I struggle with that one is, Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs has a variety called Berry Box, correct?
What a variety. Yeah, it's amazing. It's new, so you might not be familiar with it, but you see this thing, you're going to want it.
And it's interesting for me because, again, you got to go back to where I came from and in the garden center industry. And I remember in the 70s and 80s and 90s, we were selling pyracantha or firethorn like you just would not believe. And this particular plant, as I understand it, is a hybrid between pyracantha and osteomeles. Osteomeles, okay. Osteomeles, very, very interesting, which is a warm climate evergreen. So what a great plant for berries. And, along that line, again, years ago in the garden center industry, I remember when we would sell all kinds of mountain ash trees.
Oh, yeah.
And they're just so, I don't know, just prone to problems like cytospora canker and fire blight and leaf spot, and they just fall apart. But I remember back then, the point here is that today, some of these plants that we have to produce berries in our landscape are really fantastic plants.
Right, and the newer varieties are going to be more adapted to the realities of what it's like to garden
exactly.
Now, I do want to mention, so monoecious plants are plants that have male and female flowers on the same plant. So it could be that there are male and female flowers separate on the plant, or it could be that every flower contains both male and female parts, which is the most common. But there is one exception here, because there's always some exception, right? And that is viburnum. So viburnum are monoecious, which is to say that they have all the male and female parts they need contained in one plant. But viburnums will only flower if they have genetic diversity introduced in pollination. So they are not what is called self-compatible. You actually need two distinct varieties. So you can't just use like two blue muffin because those are clones of one another. Those will not pollinate each other. You need a totally different arrowwood viburnum from blue muffin in order to get fruit on blue muffin. So all the information that you need, again, this is not something that you need to know going into the garden center, but it is something that if you're looking for a shrub that berries up, you're just going to want to read the tag and make sure you understand what is required or not, because there are plenty of plants that are self-fruitful, to make sure you get those beautiful berries. Because, it's very disappointing to people when they thought they were doing the right thing and they find out that they weren't.
This subject just inspires me. It really does. Let me give you a limerick that's inspired by this. Berries, a gift beyond measure. They give me so much pleasure, so please do not whine. They have me on cloud 9. I've found my buried treasure. I enjoy at my chateau berries I love to grow. I press them into juice, then listen as a recluse to Barry Manilow. I love Barry Manilow. I admit it. Again, I'm a baby boomer. I think he's the best.
My mom went to Vegas to see Barry Manilow.
There you go. I've gone to Barry Manilow concerts. I love Barry Manilow. Okay, where were we?
Well, that's spelled different. It's spelled different. It's not Berry. And I think that it's confusing for a lot of people. When a lot of people, they hear berry, they think edible.
Yes.
But certainly, especially as we're talking about these ornamental shrubs, you probably should not eat them. Most of them are not poisonous, although there's plenty of poisonous berries around in fall, most notably, of course, the one that everybody asks about, and it just wouldn't be fall unless we mention it at least once, pokeweed. It's not fall unless you talk about pokeweed.
Poke salad.
Because everybody's always like, what is that?
Yeah.
Bright pink stems, bright purpley black berries. Do not eat those berries. As I often say, when in doubt, don't about gardening. When in doubt, don't also applies to eating plants.
Walk away and nobody gets hurt. Of course, there's so many other great plants. I mean, when you think about holly or the Ilex genus, lots and lots of evergreens in that genus. Of course, evergreens like junipers, gin fizz comes to mind. The ornamental value of rose hips. I love rose hips. They're so decorative. They're so beautiful. And then, of course, you have bittersweet, which is a touchy subject because you have the native bittersweet and then you have the non-native, which is incredibly invasive and you should not plant.
And if you have it in your yard, you probably have the invasive variety and not the native one.
Exactly. But we'll talk about how the birds spread the love around coming up in segment 4 with the Birdman. Prior to that, Stacy's going to introduce us to a plant that I'm sure will be berryful. That's coming up next here on the Gardening Simplified Show.
Greetings, gardening friends, and welcome back to the Gardening Simplified Show, where the order of the day is berries. Because it's the season for fruit to form on plants. Some of it's edible, some of it is not. Again, when in doubt, do not eat it. Do not attempt to eat it. Do not let your dogs or children eat it, no matter how interesting it looks. I mean, I was raised with, the fear of God about eating yew berries.
You bet.
Because they were right outside our front door. And my mom told me from a very young age, never eat those. So I kind of was like afraid to even touch the plants. I was like a little bit, I still like, it's a prejudice I carry to this day, actually, against you.
Well, and when you say you or you,
not you.
Right, Y-E-W, not me, Y-E-W.
Taxus.
Not Texas, Taxus, T-A-X-U-S.
And the crazy thing about Taxus is Taxus is not the plant on trial today. I just, spoiler alert.
Death and Taxus.
It's so wild to me that it is easily one of the most toxic plants that you can grow. And deer devour it. Mm-hmm. Like, even if I wanted to grow Taxus in my garden, I could not, because despite the fact that ingesting even the smallest amount will kill a human, the deer just chow it down to nubs. Mm-hmm. Life is strange. But anyway.
Only two sure things, death and Taxus, right?
Yeah. Well, Taxus, fortunately, is not a sure thing. Some people love it. If you go to the UK, you're going to love it. But over here, I'm a little like, anyway. So there's a lot of great plants for fall fruit, but a lot of them suffer from a involuntary affliction. And that is that they don't look like much in spring when everybody's in the garden center. Yep. And as a result, our fall landscapes suffer because people tend to focus on plants in spring that look really great at that exact moment in the garden center. And, even though if you think about like all of the wonderful plants that we have with beautiful berries, like proudberry, coralberry, brandywine viburnum, we have nice tags with colorful pictures of what those berries are going to look like. And, my personal belief is that people don't believe it.
Yeah.
I don't think that people actually believe that what we show them is going to happen in terms of berry development is actually going to happen for them.
Very true with coralberry, yes. And that's a plant with a great botanical name. Is it Symphocarpus? Symphocarpus. Love that. Yes,
it is a great name. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people, they just kind of pass them by. Oh, yeah, sure, right. It's really going to look like that, And I get that, because today's plant on trial is a calicarpa, Pearl Glam calicarpa, also known as beautyberry. And this is a plant that when I first started getting into gardening, I saw pictures of it in gardening magazines and books. And I thought, yeah, right. You see these berries, and the berries on beautyberry, whether it's Pearl Glam or another of the many varieties and species that are out there, are a true orchid purple. Like, you have to see this color to believe it. It is truly amazing. And so I would see these pictures, in books and think, yeah, that's not really going to happen. Even though it's hardy, I would just say, like, no, it's probably not going to happen. So the first time that I actually saw a calicarpa in fruit, my jaw dropped because it was right there as promised, with just hundreds, if not thousands, of these small orchid color berries. And it was even more beautiful than I could have imagined, not least of all, because here is this just marvelous purple color in fall. And there's red and yellow and orange and all these colors changing in the landscape. And then just these purple berries. And so it pays to take a little leap of faith. I can tell you that as far as Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs goes, we are not lying to you on those tags. We want you to be happy. We're not abusing your trust. So when you're in the garden center, you know, whether it's about fall fruit or anything else, do take a chance. Know that that whatever it's claiming it's going to do, it will do in time. Sometimes it needs a little bit of time to get established. But you know, when we were talking last week about bulbs, I was talking about how bulbs are great, but they have a liability. And, you know, just like people, you can have a great person, but they might have like a little bit of a liability. And in this case, the liability of Calicarpa or beautyberry is that they don't really look that interesting for the rest of the year. Yeah. They're kind of just like a plain and nondescript plant. And they're just kind of hanging out, being green. They don't even like flower until August. And that, because especially a lot of the older varieties can be quite large, up to 10 feet tall and wide, you know, that's commanding a lot of space, precious real estate in your yard for maybe just a few weeks of interest. So when it came time for us here at Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs to find a Calicarpa that was going to, you know, do more for people, you know, our first thought, of course, was foliage. You know, is how do we get a Calicarpa that earns its keep in your landscape, that is beautiful and interesting enough to make it worth keeping around for those couple of glorious weeks in the fall? And the answer to that, again, is Pearl Glam Beautyberry. This is a variety that came to us from Dr. Tom Rainey at North Carolina State University. And there's two things that are, well, there's three things really that are very special about it. Number one, and most important, its foliage is a beautiful, dramatic purple black. Do you grow this plant?
I do not. I do not have this in my landscape.
So it's a beautiful dark purple black, and that is going to happen as soon as it starts to emerge in spring, all the way through until fall. And so not only is that ornamental and beautiful on its own, but it is absolutely fabulous when the flowers, which are the second unique thing about it, and they are white instead of the more traditional pink. When those come out, amazing contrast, because you get that beautiful like black and white tuxedo-y kind of look. And that's the same kind of thing like we have on Wine and Spirits Weigela. So August rolls around, you've got this black foliage plant, white flowers popping out, and then the fruit develops, and then that beautiful orchid purple flower or fruit is contrasting with that black foliage. Now, the third great thing about Pearl Glam Calicarpa or beautyberry compared to other varieties is that it's a space saver. So I said some of those older varieties, 10 feet tall and wide, take up a ton of space, whereas Pearl Glam is about 2 to 3 feet wide and 4 to 5 feet tall. So it has kind of a columnar habit. And I love these narrow plants because they take up less ground space. So you get all of that impact, but they're only taking up a fraction of the ground space as something else. And of course, you know, if you're taking up less ground space, that means you have more space for other plants. And who doesn't want that?
Exactly.
Especially because this black foliage contrasts so beautifully with so many other perennials. It almost has that punctuation mark kind of look in the landscape. Great in a foundation planting, perennial bed, wherever you want to grow it. You will find this to be a very, very colorful and unique plant. And again, you're going to look at the pictures that we have on YouTube or on our show notes at Gardening Simplified on Air and think it's not really going to do that. But it will, and it actually does not require a pollinator. So it is monoecious, as we were discussing at the beginning of the show. It does not require a second Calicarpa variety in order for that fruit to form. So one thing it does need is some maturity. And this isn't uncommon for any kind of plant that bears fruit, whether it's an actual edible fruit or just an ornamental fruit. In the case of Calicarpa, they need to have a good root system before they're going to be able to put the energy into developing and maintaining that fruit. So a little bit of patience, but it will absolutely pay off. Now, a lot of our warm climate listeners are probably going, yeah, beautyberry, I know that, because we have a North American native species of beautyberry, Calicarpa americana. And if you have ever driven anywhere in the South in September, you can't miss it. You've seen this, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And it brings up the point also that with the plant, this is a plant that can handle heat In other words, lots of sunshine.
It is a full sun plant, at least 6 hours of sun every day. And yeah, if you're driving around the South in September, you can't miss it because you're just driving along the highway and then all of a sudden there's just like this blammo covered in purple berries. And I think that our native species, and Pearl Glam is not one of our native species, it's actually a hybrid of the Asian species, which is why it's able to get that dark black purple foliage. But our native one, they're almost like bubbles. They're so big and they're so densely packed on the stem that they almost obscure the stem. I mean, they are truly, truly incredible, a sight to see. Now, our native variety is only hardy down to USDA Zone 6. Pearl Glam is hardy down to USDA Zone 5. But in both of these cases, the plant may, whether you're growing the native variety or Pearl Glam, if you have a severe winter, it may die back to the ground, but that is normal. You don't have to worry. It will sprout from the roots, and because it flowers and fruits on new wood, which is to say not until it starts to, grow later in the season.
Later in the season.
Exactly. You don't have to worry about missing out on the fruit, even if it dies back to the ground. Now, one caveat I do want to offer with Pearl Glam, I had it in my garden. I don't have it anymore because I made some changes, but if it does die back to the ground, when it starts to finally emerge, it can be quite late to emerge. And the foliage is so dark that unless you have it against some light colored mulch, it's very easy not to see it. And then you're out there, you're gardening, you're like, yeah, it's spring, this is great. And then crunch, there goes your calicarpa. So if your plant died back to the ground.
Story of my life. Crunch, there goes my calicarpa.
If you do have one, make sure that you've got it cordoned off in a way until it starts to put on a little bit of height, just to make sure that disaster does not strike. So hardy to USDA Zone 5, heat tolerant to USDA Zone 8, no pollinator required, and extremely deer resistant. It is actually in the Proven Winners Color Choice Deer Proof program. So this is a plant that you don't have to worry about deer eating. It is a great and unique choice.
Sold.
If your landscape could use a little spicing up right now, take a look at gardeningsimplifiedonAir.com and explore Pearl Glam Beautyberry. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, we're opening up the mailbag, so please stay tuned. Greetings, gardening friends, and welcome back to the Gardening Simplified show. We love to hear from you, whether you have a question for our mailbag segment or you just have something that you want to share and celebrate with us. We would love to hear from you. You can just go to gardeningsimplifiedonair.com. That's our website, and use the contact form to send us a message. You can even attach some photos there. You can also leave a comment on YouTube. And I do love hearing from people when they just want to share something amazing that they've done. And so the first thing that I want to share with everybody is we heard from a listener, Kim, who is here in the Grand Rapids area. And she sent photos of her container combinations outside her business. And
whoa, they're incredible.
I wrote her back and I said, Kim, it's not often that I opened an email like this and audibly gasp, but I did. So this combination, you have to see it. So please go to YouTube or our show notes at gardeningsimplifiedonAir.com.
Was that castor bean I saw in
Yes, it was.
Oh, wow.
So when you see this, you won't believe it. The castor bean plants in these containers are well over 10 feet tall. And she has it combined with Vermilion Arcufia, one of our absolute favorites, some gorgeous sweet potato vines. I mean, this is a combination that will stop you in your tracks. And she said that they all started out as very small plants earlier this year. And she's just been fertilizing and watering like crazy.
That's great.
And the results speak for themselves. So please do take a moment to look at Kim's gorgeous containers.
I saw a Persian shield in there.
Yes, Persian
too.
shield. That was the other thing. I knew there was something else I was forgetting. That's Strobilanthes diarianus, a purple foliage tropical plant. And
incredible plant.
yeah, this is just not something that you would expect to be growing like this in Michigan. Like maybe down in Miami or something. But nope, it's right here in Michigan. So
great job.
Amazing, Kim. We love to see it.
Hey, Stacy, we got a lovely comment from a listener, Jennifer. Love the show. Look forward to each Saturday episode. Stacy, we wanted to extend support to you regarding your no lawn project. We are senior sisters that have done the same thing to our backyard, Texas's own 8B. We started over a month ago, pulled up grass, laid down mulch. We're so thrilled to have your endorsement because you did it the same way. We weren't sure at first, but we loved the way the cedar mulch has played out, kept everything so clean. While we decide on paver placements and small garden areas, we are mindful of zone planting 5 to 9, zone 5 to 9, part sun, part shade, and shade, as these work best for us because we have a lot of trees. We've been getting design inspiration from Pinterest, Mediterranean patio designs. It'll be a good project for us. Our front yard will remain a lawn, HOA, but we are now enjoying our water bill being cut in half. I can imagine in Texas. We're looking forward to seeing your design decisions. That's fantastic.
What are the chances that we were pretty much doing this exact same project at the same time, and we had the same approach, which is just that this idea can buy us time to work on it in phases. So I was absolutely tickled to see this message and know that other people are joining the movement. And if you aren't familiar, there are videos on our YouTube channel of what I've done to my yard. And there will be an update out, and you can see where it was at in August. And maybe we'll have another one in spring.
Yeah, it's great. And Jennifer, I can't wait to see updates of your landscape and what you've done. That's fantastic. And it's great. Yeah, I think what you're doing, Stacy, is inspirational. You know, I've done the same. I'm lawnless.
Yes, you are very lawnless.
I am lawnless.
You have like a lawn path.
Not lawless, lawnless.
You might be lawless too. I don't know.
I fought the lawn and the lawn won. Yeah. Where are we? Oh, here it is.
This long question here.
Hi, Stacy and Rick. I absolutely love the show. Been watching from the beginning. Okay, so there's a backstory here. You want to share it with us?
So this listener sent a lot of photos that we'll have on YouTube or on gardeningsimplifiedonair.com. She had a beautiful old silver maple that they had to cut down because of age. They think it was very, very old. They were very sad to have to lose it. But they left the stump and use it as like a perch for a flower pot, which is a very nice idea. Give it some height and make it a little more attractive. But now the stump has, of course, continued to rot. This was 4 years ago. So now they need it ground down. And what she wants to do instead is to plant a Temple of Bloom heptacodium where the silver maple used to be. But she said that people are giving her various opinions on whether or not it will actually grow in this spot. So they're planning to have the stump ground down past soil level, add topsoil loam and compost back into it, even it out, even though it's sloped. They're going to regrade it and get it back to basically as if the tree had not existed, near as you can tell above ground. She says, we're willing to put in the care, but will it work? And will it survive? What should I do? More grass. And so she's just wondering what she can do. And I wanted to say I had a ash tree removed from my property shortly after we moved in. Of course, here in Michigan, we were the epicenter for the emerald ash borer invasion, which has killed, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of ashes nationwide. And I unfortunately had the bad luck of having a very beautiful, mature ash in my yard, succumbing to it eventually because it took a little while to get out here in the West. So when we did have that taken out, we did have it professionally ground. And I have to say, there was not a trace of stump when this was done.
Same experience for me. You do want to talk to the people who are doing the grinding of the stump to make sure they go deep enough, take that stump out. But I had the same thing. I had a very large oak tree next to my house, and it was too close to the house. It needed to go. I replanted as soon as we were done grinding that stump out. Yes, I used a hatchet. I did some digging, making sure all the roots were gone. You don't want to have the wood chips left laying around because they're going to extract, or not necessarily extract, but burn up valuable nutrients for the plant that you put in. But other than that, and you will see recommendations on the internet not to plant in an area where you've ground down a tree, but I've done it successfully a few times.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't replace this one with a tree. It was just with a variety of different perennials and that kind of thing. But I found no issue whatsoever planting in the area. And especially if they are going to, the landscapers are going to, take this away and put soil. I don't think you should have any trouble at all planting a heptacodium. And one thing I would say is that if you are concerned, maybe start to dig before you head out to the garden center. And if worse comes to worse, start with a 1-gallon plant. Anytime you have an area that's difficult to dig in, if you can find a smaller 1-gallon plant instead of a big 3-gallon plant, that means less digging for you. And chances are the plant is going to be able to sort it out itself. I mean, this year, 4 years after your tree removal, there's not going to be a lot of living roots in there still trying to take up, water and really competing with your new plant. So I don't personally think it'll be a problem, especially since, as you've said, you are willing to, put the work in and make sure that it is well cared for. You're going to be keeping a close eye on it. I don't personally see any reason, I don't think that silver maples typically have any kind of like allelopathic or, the effect of curtailing growth of other plants like, a black walnut might.
I think if anything, some surface roots remaining, you're going to see evidence of that with mushrooms sometimes. But again, the soil could be exhausted. So fertilizing, adding some nutrients, minerals back into the soil probably would be key. But beyond that, I truly believe that you can replant in this area. Yeah.
And, it is sad as it was to lose your silver maple. Silver maples are problem trees. I have a huge one in my front yard, unfortunately. I often say that I had the worst luck for mature trees on my property because it was a silver maple, a Siberian elm, and an ash. Wow. And it's just like, couldn't anyone have picked a decent tree at some point in the history of this home? Yeah. So things have improved, but anyway, as sad as that might have been, your sewers, no doubt, thank you for the loss of the silver maple. So if you have a question, don't forget you can reach out to us at gardeningsimplifiedonair.com, and we would always love to hear from you. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, the Birdman is coming in for a landing, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Gardening Simplified show. Today for Branching News, a show favorite. We have an opportunity to chat with the Birdman. That's right, the Birdman, Bill Stovall, swooping in here on the Gardening Simplified show. Our topic, of course, today has been berries and fall berries, and birds love berries and treat shrubs as an all-you-can-eat buffet, and it's not an uncommon sight, of course, to see cardinals or cedar waxwings gulping them down on a wintry day. When you think about it, a lot of birds, they love worms and insects, bugs, but boy, they're not going to turn down a good berry. Bill, thanks for joining us on the show, and am I correct that birds love berries?
Birds need berries. And we need the birds to need berries because they also plant them for us.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right.
Have you thought about that and put the birds to work for you?
That's right.
Listen, I listed a dozen birds just thinking off the top of my head that just love berries, and this is the time of the year to find them, and you should have a lot of them all around your own yard.
Well, share some of those with us, Bill. What birds would you say really go after the berries?
Well, robins are a lot of fun. They like mountain ash. You know that story about too many mountain ash berries, and they wobble all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Blue jays and cedar waxwings and bluebirds and red-winged blackbirds and goldfinches, purple finches, wood thrush, veery, song sparrows, chickadees, titmice.
Now, I've had,
just to name a few,
I've had cardinals on a non-invasive honeysuckle shrub in my garden. They seem to really like the fruits of that, which are in summer, not fall.
Well, that's one thing about berries. They come on at all different seasons. We don't pick a lot of strawberries right now, but we sure are picking, some of the fall berries.
Yeah.
And don't miss the crab apples and the flowering crabs and all the little understory trees that create dogwoods that create berries for our people now.
So how is it that a bird is able to eat a berry, which of course they're eating not for the seed inside, but for the flesh around the seed, because that's of course where all the nutrients are. How is it that the berry is able to pass through their digestive system without being digested?
Well, the flesh around the berry is what is taken off on the inside of the bird, and then the acids in the stomach of the bird often help to break the edge, the outside of the seeds down and make them so that they can sprout. So they actually go through a planting process by eating them.
And it comes out with a little fertilizer load convenently attached to the seeds. So
Exactly.
gives it a perfect little start there.
Little spot there.
Well, of course, berries offer a lot of energy to birds. They're packed with sugars, fats, and vitamins, but they're kind of low in protein. But and that protein that, of course, they're going to get from insects. You know, I watch the woodpeckers in my yard. Of course, they love the insects. But boy, they'll go after the berries too. But it does bring up the point that in the dead of winter, when those insects aren't around to help supplement those berries, it's not a bad idea to have a couple bird feeders set out, right?
Well, particularly if you're talking about the protein, have a suet feeder or two around for everybody to come and nibble on, because that's good protein. But there are a lot of berries that winter over. As a matter of fact, the high bush cranberry is better in late in the winter and early spring, because it's pretty harsh at the first thing in the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we should just clarify for anyone listening that the high bush cranberry is actually a viburnum, not a cranberry. It just is called the cranberry bush because it has red fruit, but they're actually quite tall, whereas cranberries are low growing. And there are a lot of viburnums from Asia, but there are also a number of Native American viburnums, of which the American cranberry bush is one. And yeah, beautiful jewel-like fruit on there that does resemble its namesake.
Yeah, it's fluorescent.
I have a grape leaf viburnums that are just growing wild all around my place too. Mm-hmm. So they just let nature take its course.
If you can, yeah, it's a great approach.
You know, early in fall on these plants, whether it's viburnum, whatever type of plant it is, those berries can be really fluorescent and beautiful and ornamental. As the fall progresses, we start to have some hard frosts. Some of these trees are still loaded with berries and fruits, but they start to wrinkle. And I often think, Bill, about the fact that some of this fruit is fermenting. Does that cause problems for birds? Maybe window collisions, that type of thing? Do we have some? Do we experience some difficulty with that?
I'm not sure that fermentation changes their mind very much, but it may change their ability to walk or fly.
Yes.
Particularly walk around underneath some of those. But I don't think there's anything wrong. You can pass a little bit of alcohol through your system and not be any the worse for wear usually.
Right. And so it does seem that there is, in my experience, a wide range of when birds prefer to eat different berries. So some, they'll be taking right in fall when they're fresh. And then, a lot of them, like crab apples and the viburnum that you just mentioned, they kind of want to soften, to have gone through several freeze-thaw cycles so that those fruits start to soften and get juicy. And do they seem to prefer them that way, or it's just that they have exhausted other food sources, so then they go for those?
I think they prefer them that way. It may help with the digestion. I don't know. It's part of the system, but it's consistent. They some wait till later. A lot of the apples and just as you talk about. So there's fruit available through most of the season. Spring, summer, fall, and winter. But it's something that they really depend on in the winter to have some berries around. And some of the dogwoods have berries that last well into the spring.
And, one of the great things about this sort of, range of preferences from a horticultural standpoint is that as gardeners, that means we get to enjoy the berries and the birds eating them. So we'll have all that color, all through late fall and early winter, and then we get to enjoy the birds eating them. So it's kind of a win-win situation.
Certainly is. And the color and just the different, the red osier dogwood is the stems are red, but the berries are white, and it's just, there's constant activity.
Yeah.
You bet. Beautiful. Now, Bill, when we talk about this for our home landscapes, of course, the berries are beautiful. The birds like to eat the berries. But in essence, we are also providing a service to the birds in that these types of shrubs, you mentioned the dogwood or viburnum, they provide some protection also. You know, we were talking about gin fizz juniper. Junipers or evergreens, whatever plants like this that we add to our landscape. Birds need some protection in winter also, whether it be hiding from predators or from maybe the nasty, windy, cold weather, correct?
Cover is real important for birds to break the wind and to hide and underneath that cover, there's often food, places to scratch around when the weather's bad.
Sure.
So landscaping is really important, and to take a look at what you're going to be planting and how big it's going to be, and if you can use some of the shorter understory trees, the dogwoods and some of the others to plant, it really helps your garden and helps the looks of everything.
How important are thorny plants in this, or plants that would be, you know, more of a deterrent to predators? I'm thinking specifically cats, because of course there are a lot of people who have, you know, who are facilitating feral cats and that kind of thing. I had always heard that if you do have some nice thorny shrubs around, that those are extra helpful for birds in escaping from cats.
I don't know anything about that. I do know that we have some. I've got hawthorn here, and it's a beautiful and thorny thing. I've got black locust here, and it's got thorns on it. But I didn't think about dissuading cats. I just assumed they'd be indoors.
Well, ideally they would be, but unfortunately the reality for many people does not align. And I'm sure, of course, in your wonderful garden, the birds are very safe and have no shortage of places to take refuge.
Would you plant a barberry?
Heck no.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
I have some. I like. It was a volunteer, but I've got it's probably about 8 feet long and about 4 feet high and about 4 feet wide, and it is filled with berries.
Okay.
Barberry?
Barberry.
Yeah, barberry.
Sharp, thorny stuff.
I can do other things for the birds than plant a barberry. Just saying.
Well, raspberries are really good for that kind of thing too. That's thorny, and it creates a good jam sometimes.
You bet. Bill, in addition to the berries, I know you're a big proponent of making sure that we provide some sort of water source for the birds, especially as we head into fall and winter, particularly here in the north and in the Midwest, something that you need to think about, right?
Bird baths are critical. Birds can find food. They can fly around and find that. But when things freeze over, they're in trouble if they need to take a drink. And they need to be clean during the winter as well. But to have a bird bath year-round is a really good idea, providing you dump it out on a regular basis so that you don't breed mosquitoes.
That's true. Now, Birdman, when we interview people on the show about plants, we usually ask them the question, do you have a favorite plant that you want to share with our listeners? I want to ask you, do you have a favorite bird? If you were forced to say, this is my favorite bird, what bird would it be?
Oh, Rick.
I know.
I can't choose a grandchild or a great grandchild either that I like best. I think loons or pileated woodpeckers or I like a flash of a cardinal, Baltimore Orioles, Northern Oriole. I'm sorry, that's old school.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of little LBJs around, little brown jobs, little black jobs that are just the activity.
LBJs.
It's a constant. It's LBJs. Yeah, little brown jobs.
Used to be president.
If you have difficulty in identification, just look at the color code and then just state what that's really professional.
It is.
To say there's an LBJ.
Well, it's across disciplines, because I know in entomology they have LBMs, little brown moths, and in
I didn't know that.
yep, and and Adriana says they have little brown mushrooms, so she is very interested in mushroom foraging. So she says they have LBMs, little brown mushrooms, and of course in horticulture we have the DYCs, the darn yellow composites, which is there's so many yellow daisy-like flowers. It's just kind of it's one of those. It's a good catch-all. Might seem unprofessional, but it is widespread use across academia and lay people alike.
Well, it just gives you a taste of professionalism to be able to use some interesting terms.
Exactly.
I suppose I'm going to just start throwing acronyms at things, and yes, I'll sound professional and like I know what I'm talking about. That's
it's all in the tone of your voice.
You usually do, though, Rick. You usually do know.
Thank you, Birdman.
I did say usually.
Thank you. Before we let you go, Birdman, got to ask you real quickly, for the people who love the hummingbirds out there, I've enjoyed them all summer long. As we get into fall, they start heading out. When should you take down? I mean, a question people often ask, when do you take down that hummingbird feeder?
I would say when you stop seeing them, let it go a couple of weeks. It's not negative to leave it out. Make sure it stays fresh. Don't let it get stale. Mm-hmm. But it's not going to keep them here. The light is what makes them move, not the food. Mm-hmm. So they're not going to stay because their hummingbird feeder is full.
Right.
Wow.
And it's time to do that. Time to keep watching, and then when you don't see your hummingbirds around anymore, then you can take it down for the season.
Well, Birdman, IWF, it was fun.
Bless your heart for knowing the letters.
Always fun to talk to you, folks. That's it's the Birdman, Bill Stovall. We always love talking to you, and I know our listeners, viewers love it too. Thanks so much, Birdman.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, thanks for seeing you guys. Talk with you later.
Yep.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Well, there is never a dull moment when the Birdman visits, so we are always grateful to hear from him, and we hope you are too. So I want to thank Birdman. I want to thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you, Adriana. And most of all, thank you all to you for listening, watching the Gardening Simplified show. We hope you have a wonderful week ahead.